Hi friends, welcome to Food Revolution Network's How to Cook series. I'm Nichole Dandrea-Russert, Food Revolution Network's dietitian and recipe developer, and my goal for you during this series is to help you be successful in your own kitchen. Today we're going to talk about how to stock a plant-based pantry so that you can create healthy and flavorful meals in a matter of minutes. This is for you if you're new to plant-based eating and you'd like to learn how to stock a plant-powered pantry. Or perhaps you are a plant-based pro and you're just looking for some new inspiration. Or maybe you would just like to learn some tips and tricks on how to be organized in your own pantry. No matter where you are in your plant-based journey, I hope that you get something out of this video today. You may be wondering, why is it so important to have a well-stocked pantry? Having a well-stocked plant-powered pantry is the foundation to creating healthy and flavorful plant-based meals in your own kitchen. For example, have you ever browsed online looking for the perfect recipe to make one evening? You found that perfect recipe, it looks gorgeous, it's simple to make, and then you scanned your cabinets and you realize that you have all of the ingredients on hand to make that recipe. You probably yelped with excitement because you don't have to go to the grocery store, and it made plant-based recipe creation that much easier by saving you time and a trip to the grocery store. There are other reasons why having a well-stocked pantry is so important. Number one, I just mentioned, it saves you trips to the grocery store. And number two, it'll save you time in the kitchen, which we're about to discuss. And number three, it helps you to cook at home more and eat out less often. Now, eating out every once in a while is fine, but cooking at home more is better for your health. I don't know about you, but whenever I eat out, it may be delicious, but I always wake up swollen and thirsty from all the sodium in that meal. Cooking plant-based meals at home helps you to create healthy and flavorful dishes so that you can stay healthy. Number four, it helps plant-based creation become that much easier. The more often you have plant-based ingredients stocked in your cabinets, the more often you're going to create plant-based meals and the easier it's going to become. And then number five, having plant-based ingredients on hand in your pantry is going to help healthy habits stick. Let's start with whole grains, one of my personal favorite food groups because whole grains are packed with nutrition, including healthy carbohydrate, tons of fiber, B vitamins, and plant-based protein. Keeping 2 to 3 grains on hand is always a good option so that you can create a healthy base for a recipe throughout the week easily. Starting with what you know and love is a great place to begin. So for example, if you love pasta, then keep 1 or 2 boxes of pasta on hand. Just make sure it's whole grain or legume pasta. You can also do something like rice or quinoa. Those are 2 great options. Again, look for whole grain variety. So something like wild rice, black rice, or brown rice are great options and easy to pull together throughout the week. Another great option, who doesn't love oatmeal? Keeping on hand some rolled oats or oat groats or steel cut oats, whichever you prefer, another great option for an easy and sustainable breakfast in the morning. As you experiment more in the kitchen and as you get more comfortable in the kitchen, you can start adding on to those grains. So you've got the 2 to 3 to start, and then start experimenting with a variety of grains. Perhaps you try teff or millet or buckwheat. Each time you go to the grocery store, maybe select 1 additional grain and a recipe to go along with that grain so that you can start experimenting with that grain. Research shows that the more variety of whole grains that you have in your diet, the more you're going to foster a healthy gut and overall health. Next up, lentils and beans and peas, the legume family. Legumes are a staple in a plant-based diet because they are packed with protein and fiber. So keeping both the canned and dry variety on hand is a great idea. I personally like to keep 2 to 3 cans of my favorite beans on hand. So for me, it's garbanzo beans or chickpeas, black beans, and butter beans. So I always have 2 to 3 cans of each variety on hand so that I can prepare recipes quickly throughout the week if I haven't planned ahead with my dry beans and cooking them. The most important thing to remember with canned beans or any canned food product is to look for BPA-free cans. BPA is a chemical that can leach into your food, so always look for BPA-free when you're purchasing canned food products. For the dried beans and peas, again, I always like to keep 2 to 3 on hand. If I know that I'm going to use them within about 6 months, then I will display them on my counter because as you can see, they make very pretty displays and they're colorful. So they'll look really pretty on your counter. Only do that if you know you're going to use them within 6 months. They usually have a shelf life of about a year. So stored in a dark, cool place like your pantry, beans shelf life will be about a year. If they're on your countertop, it'll be about 6 months. If you think you're gonna have them longer than that, then go ahead and store them in the freezer until you're ready to bring them to room temperature and cook them. So keeping 2 to 3 varieties of both canned and dried beans will help to keep your plant-based pantry packed with protein-powered foods. Next, we have flour. As you start experimenting with more plant-based recipes, you may notice that flour starts to take over your cabinets. A common question that I get is how many flours to keep on hand because they really do start accumulating. One of my personal favorites is oat flour. Oat flour can successfully substitute in any recipe that calls for white or wheat flour. So I really like oat flour for that reason. Another one I personally like keeping on hand is almond flour. It's not always a one-to-one substitute, but it is a lot of fun to work with and it can substitute some of the flour in recipes. Buckwheat flour is another personal favorite. If you've ever had it, you probably know that it tastes deliciously nutty. It is a great flour to use because it's packed with fiber and plant-based protein. So it's a lot of fun to work with buckwheat flour and making waffles and pancakes and other baked goods. And then as you get more comfortable with experimenting with flours, perhaps you branch out into other flours such as millet flour or teff flour or chickpea flour. There are lots of varieties, but starting with 2 to 3 at first is a great place to begin. Next, we have nuts and seeds. So you know that legumes are a wonderful source of plant-based protein, as are nuts and seeds. So keeping 2 to 3 nuts and 2 to 3 seeds on hand is a great idea for a well-stocked plant-based pantry. Of course, if you have a nut allergy or if somebody in your family has a nut allergy, keeping all seeds on hand is still a great idea, and all seeds are a go. From sunflower seeds to pumpkin seeds, to hemp seeds, to chia seeds, to flax seeds, they're all so good for you and they're widely used in plant-based recipe creation. Nuts, same thing. Anything is a go here. So from walnuts to pecans to almonds to cashews to Brazil nuts, they are all so good for you. Both nuts and seeds are packed with plant-based protein and fiber, phytonutrients. They are also packed with healthy fats, which, by the way, brings us to the topic of storage. So as you can see here, I like to store nuts in mason jars. I like to just keep on hand what I'm going to use in the next 3 months in my plant-based pantry. All of my back stock of nuts and seeds are kept in my freezer. So if you have a large quantity of nuts and seeds that you know you're not going to use within 3 months, keep them in the refrigerator for up to 6 months or in the freezer for up to a year. Otherwise, you can pull out what you need and keep them in your plant-based pantry. Now, if you are feeling ambitious and you want to make your own nut and seed butters, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. They come together in minutes and they are so good for you. Plus, you can do a variety of blends like pecans and walnuts or cashews and almonds. It's a lot of fun to do. But that said, you don't have to make your own nut and seed butter. However, keeping 2 to 3 nut or seed butters on hand at all times is another great way to keep your pantry stocked. So something like peanut butter or tahini, which is ground sesame seeds, a sesame seed paste. These are widely used items in plant-based recipe creation. So to summarize, keeping 2 to 3 nuts on hand, unless there's a nut allergy, keeping 2 to 3 seeds on hand, and then 2 to 3 nut and seed butters on hand is going to help to keep your pantry well stocked for plant-based recipe creations. So next up, we have dried fruits, which go along nicely with nuts and seeds because you can easily pull together a homemade trail mix or muesli with the addition of nuts, seeds, and dried fruit. So keeping on hand things like dried cranberries that are naturally sweetened, dried apricots, or dried dates. So dates actually serve multiple functions in that they can be chopped up and added to oatmeal or the trail mix I just mentioned. You can also soak dates in water and then blend them to make a date paste. And this can be used as a natural whole food sweetener in exchange for other sweeteners that are called for in recipes. So something like a tablespoon of date paste instead of a tablespoon of maple, which I also keep on hand, is a great option if you want a whole food sweetener. So keeping 2 to 3 dried fruits on hand. If you want an additional sweetener, something like coconut sugar or maple syrup, these have a long shelf life and they can also be part of your plant-based pantry. Next, we have our spices and seasonings and flavorings that are essential in plant-based recipe creation. In addition to the delicious whole foods that you're adding, these add so much flavor to meals. So starting with some of our liquid products, something like tamari or coconut aminos. These two products are very similar to soy sauce, except they're a little bit less processed. They are higher in sodium, however, a little bit goes a long way. Because tamari tends to be higher in sodium, we always recommend that you choose reduced sodium tamari. Alternatively, you could use coconut aminos, which again is similar. It's very similar to soy sauce. It's less in sodium, but it has a similar flavor profile. Again, a little bit goes a long way with these two ingredients, and we use them often in our cooking at Food Revolution Network. Other staples include vinegar, so things like apple cider vinegar or sherry vinegar and red wine vinegar, which can be used interchangeably, or rice vinegar, which is often used in Asian cooking. These are all staples in a plant-based pantry. Another item standing here is nutritional yeast. So nutritional yeast is a plant-based product that gives a cheesy flavor to meals. It's definitely a key component in a plant-based pantry and is delicious on stir fries and grain bowls and salads and steamed veggies. You can really use this in just about anything. And then of course we have our spices. So this is just a portion of my personal spice cabinet. I also have one down here that is filled to the brim, and really keeping on hand a variety of spices from your staples like garlic powder, onion powder, dried oregano, to things like 5-spice powder or chipotle powder. So depending on what type of cuisine you really love, you may want to think about the type of cuisine. So whether it's Italian or Mexican or Thai, think about the spices that make up the flavors in those dishes and keep on hand those spices so that you can create some of your favorite meals in your own plant-based kitchen. One thing about spices that may be helpful to know is that they do expire after about a year. So if you have spices that have been in your cabinet for longer than a year, compost them and purchase yourself some new spices so that you can maximize the flavor and the nutrition, because spices also come packed with nutrition. So you're maximizing flavor and nutrition with spices that are used before the year expiration. So adding all of these items and keeping your pantry well stocked with spices and condiments and seasonings and flavorings is essential to creating delicious plant-based meals in your own kitchen. Other items that are essential for a plant-based pantry and that you will use a lot include vegetable broth and plant-based milk. Now, store-bought vegetable broth and plant-based milk are totally fine. Just look for low sodium or reduced sodium broth whenever you can, because store-bought broths tend to be very high in sodium. Or if you're ambitious and want to make your own homemade vegetable broth. Of course, we completely approve of that, and that is a fantastic idea, but just know that both options are fine. Plant-based milk, look for unsweetened, number one, to avoid the extra sugar, but also because unsweetened and unflavored plant-based milk can be used in a wide variety of recipes from savory to sweet. So purchasing unsweetened and unflavored plant-based milk is a great option. Again, same thing with the broth. If you want to make your own plant-based milk out of the nuts and seeds we discussed earlier, then by all means, go for the homemade version. We love that. Finally, coconut milk is another staple item that is used often in Indian cooking or Thai cooking, and it's a great replacement for dairy to make recipes creamy. So look for light coconut milk whenever you can, just because that'll help to reduce some of the saturated fat. Coconut is naturally high in saturated fat, which we want to keep low in our diets for health reasons. So look for light coconut milk whenever you can, but go ahead and keep 1 or 2 cans of coconut milk in your pantry for those types of cuisines when you're preparing them in your plant-based kitchen. Let's talk about oil. So you may notice that we practice something called dry sauteing or oil-free sauteing here at Food Revolution Network. And that's because when you fry in oil or add oil to a pan and oil is heated at high temperatures, sometimes it can become pro-inflammatory instead of anti-inflammatory. So we practice what's called oil-free sauteing, and we saute all kinds of things from stir fries to vegetables in either vegetable broth or water. You get the same outcome. It's still delicious, and it's without any inflammatory compounds. That said, there are times where oil may be needed or may be used. So choosing the best quality oil is really important. We often recommend either a good quality olive oil or flaxseed oil. Olive oil is high in monounsaturated fat, which is a healthier, heart-healthy fat. And then flax oil is high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are good for preventing inflammation and also for brain health. The thing with these two types of oil, so olive oil and flax oil, can be good for health in small quantities. However, they cannot be heated. They are unstable at high temperatures. They become pro-inflammatory again. So waiting until after your meal is cooked to add just a little bit of olive oil or flax oil if it's needed, or adding them cold to a salad is an okay practice. The other oil, so there are times when maybe a little bit of oil is needed in cooking something like waffles or pancakes to prevent them sticking from the griddle or the waffle iron. You can use a little bit of avocado oil. Avocado oil is a monounsaturated fat, and it is stable at high heat, high temperatures. So adding just a little bit of avocado oil, you can use a towel to spread it around to oil the entire pan so you're not getting big droplets all over the pan, and spread it around just so that you have enough coating to prevent your food from sticking. One last thing I wanted to mention, since I've invited you into my pantry here, is to talk a little bit about the organization and the mason jars that I use. So one way to save on cost and packaging is to purchase ingredients in bulk. So your flours, your nuts and seeds and grains, purchasing them in bulk and then storing them in mason jars is a really great way to save on packaging, save cost, and they make really pretty and organized storage areas. So one thing I will mention, and I mentioned this before in the video, is to label what you have in the jars. Now I'm speaking from firsthand experience, not labeling grains and flours. You will forget. You may think you're going to remember when you're putting it in the mason jar, but you won't. Trust me, from experience. You want to label what is in there. So write the name of what is in the mason jar and the expiration date so that you know the amount of time that you have to use the product before you store it in your cabinet. So storing them in these glass jars is a safe, economical, and fun way to store your plant-based pantry items, whether it's in your pantry, cabinets, or in your refrigerator. Thank you so much for joining me today in the How to Cook series, How to Stock a Plant-Based Pantry. Please visit the blog, Food Revolution Network's How to Cook series blog, and How to Stock a Plant-Based Pantry, and share in the comments what you keep on hand in your plant-based pantry and how you use those ingredients. I can't wait to hear all about them. I'm Nichole Dandrea-Russert, Food Revolution Network's dietitian and recipe developer, and I can't wait to see you next time on the How to Cook series.